purpose of the three trainings we've held or facilitated this week, Monday, Tuesday, and of course today, is just basically to catch up with our taxpayers, inform you on what we have done in terms of improvements, some of the concerns that had been brought to our attention post the rollout of the VAT auto-populated return, where we are at, what is pending on our side, and in terms of if we have timelines to also communicate on the same. I know there has been a gap where when we provide solutions, the communication somehow stays on our end with our internal staff, and that end-to-end communication is a bit lacking, which I want to promise that we will work on and improve on, because at the end of the day, the users of this particular return and this product is actually our taxpayers. So I will not go into showing you how to import the CSV on each and every sheet of the VAT return. I will only take you through how to access the VAT auto-populated return, and then now just do a status update on the solutions we have provided, some of reoccurring questions that we keep on getting from our officers and from different channels of escalation, and then the guidance we want to offer from KRA side, what is pending, when do we plan on delivering the solutions, and finally what to expect if there are any upcoming enhancements as well from our end. So with that said, allow me just to log out. This is typically a taxpayer's profile. I'll use our KRA pin. Just a minute. So I've logged in to iTax profile. So for purposes of filing the VAT return, you go to Returns, File Return, select the obligation, which is VAT, and it takes you to the second page. Now, you'll realize that you can access the VAT return from two places. You can access the VAT return from here, but you can also access the VAT return from here. I want to just give a distinction of what the two provides and what it doesn't provide. I know there's still some of us who are accessing the VAT auto-populated return here, but if you actually use this hyperlink written, depending on the format you're using in terms of Excel, if I click there, I have a return that has downloaded. You can see I only have access to a VAT return without the CSV files. So I'll just proceed to open this particular return so that we have a clear distinction of the auto-populated return and just a normal manual return, but the validations still apply for both. So basically, you can see this is just the normal VAT return. It is also hosted on our website. You can see in sheet A, basic information, nothing is captured. Sheet B also for the lump sum field, which is usually here where my mouse is, row G6. It is blank. Zero rated is also blank as well. Exempt is blank. So basically, if you can still use this return, we have never said you cannot use it. It is still usable, but I always encourage taxpayers to use the other one because this one takes you a bit far. You'd have to import your own data. You have not done reconciliation with the data from auto-populated in the CSV files, what is expected, what we have availed for you. So all that, it's a bit, you'll be starting from so far. It's like you're starting from Red Sea and you're supposed to be doing it at Times Tower. So that journey for you to actually do your filing becomes a bit more longer and exhausting for you as a taxpayer. The validations implemented through the VAT auto-populated return still apply to this return. There is no difference. So allow me to just close it. Now, the second part, I know my return period form and tool reads December 2024. That's as per my test environment, but currently you're filing your March 2025 returns. So this black beautiful button on your screen is where I want you to access the VAT auto-populated return. So if I click on download, it will request you if you want to download the pre-fill form. So you just say okay. my taxes is a bit, the transactions are a bit many, so it might take a bit of time to prepare my data. My invoices are being prepared in terms of packaging them in the distinctive sheets, whether it's sheet B, sheet D, sheet E, F, H, and I. So as that happens, I would just want to show you the expectation of what you will get once the download is complete. So this is basically what we expect to get. You will have a VAT return with your PIN, and then now, of course, a CSV folder, which if you extract, you will have the different sheets depending on your business and the transactions you have, the different transactions you have. You'll have a number of CSVs being auto-populated. My test case, that my taxpayer of choice for this training session has section B. They have section D1, section F have three CSV files aligned to the different types of purchases that we have in the return. We have local, we have imports, and we have digital supply. Then section H and section I purchases, if you have them, then you will have the distinctive CSV files as well. For section B, I know currently you should be having three CSV files if you have self-supply, but I'll get into that towards as I progress with the training. My download is complete, so just allow me to just open. So that is the expectation of what you will get. You will have a VAT return here with data being pre-filled. I'll show you with my other return because this is someone else's data, which I cannot expose to the public because of data protection. And then the different CSV files, if I click it, they actually look like that. So I have a section F, H, and I for this particular scenario. Again, as you can see, um, for F and for F, I have three CSV files. The digital supply one is not there, but I'll explain it using my other sample. So with that, please allow me to close this so that I can use my own data just to explain the difference. Now, section B with VAT PIN 1, you will expect invoice data from one registered taxpayer to another registered taxpayer who actually, or rather you captured their PIN at the point of invoicing. Section B without PIN and non-VAT PIN 1, the invoices are packaged in that particular CSV file, include any sale that you have done to someone who's not registered for VAT, whether they provided their PIN or not. There's also you can also have invoices or sales you have made to someone who is registered for VAT, but you failed to capture their PIN at the point of invoicing. So both data sets will be packaged for you and availed in that CSV file. There's a third one. I know for our it's not we don't have many taxpayers who have that, but I know there's a third CSV files for section B when you're dealing with self-supply. Initially that was not there, but we realized with self-supply transactions there was a lot of manual movement of the data from this particular CSV because it's a sale from you using your PIN to your PIN. So you're the buyer and you are the purchaser in that particular transaction. So ideally those transactions would come packaged in this CSV, and there's a lot of manual effort from our taxpayers in moving that data from that CSV when you're importing it and filing the return. So we created a third CSV called section B self-supply, where we package those particular sales transactions in that CSV. You do not need to declare that particular amount. It's just for purposes of reconciliation, just doing your own reconciliation. That amount has already been factored in your return. So that is something important to note. It was one additional enhancement that we applied in the month of February 2025. Now, for the third CSV file here, I have section D1 with VAT PIN 1. So again, the sales transactions in this CSV, you have, I'm a registered taxpayer. dealing in zero rated sales, local or exempt availed, and I have sold to another registered taxpayer where I captured the PIN. That is where the packaging will be done. In this particular scenario, they did not sell to someone who's not registered for VAT, so I don't have a second CSV for that. But ideally, you would have it. So Section D1 without PIN and non-VAT, PIN 1 will also be there. We have Section E, which is now for exempt sales. If my test case had it, then it would be there. You'd have two CSVs, expect the same. The explanation is the same basically. For Section E with VAT PIN, registered to register, the PIN of the buyer was captured. Section E without PIN and non-VAT PIN 1, from a sales from a registered taxpayer to an unregistered taxpayer or a registered taxpayer whose PIN was not captured at the point of invoicing and transmitting to Kenya Revenue Authority. Now let's go to Section F. Section F, even if I was to just open my return briefly, you will realize here in Section F, under type of purchases, you can see I have three. I have local, I have import, and digital supply. So even when we are availing the data for you, we separate the two. Mainly because the source of this data is different. Now, when you're looking at local purchases, basically it is what you're invoicing on Teams and e-Teams, the normal 16% transactions. When you're looking at imports, we are availing data from our integration with ICMS. So whatever customs entry has the status of settled or removed, then it is availed in this particular CSV. Digital supply are for all the transactions where you have done trading with a non-resident, a taxpayer who has registered for digital supply. With the tax law amendments, we are looking at SEPT, significant economic presence tax. So those category of taxpayers, for example, if you're doing business with Bolt, then ideally that sale that purchase would actually be availed there. The only catch with this, each has its own catch. For you to get this CSV for digital supply, the SEP taxpayer must have filed their returns. There is a requirement. One, they must, at the point of them filing their return, the declaration must have been done as a line item on their sales side. Two, they must have filed that return. So they have submitted the return, we have visibility of the same. So as long as your PIN has been captured on a line item, then again, we prepare that data and present it as a CSV for you. Now, imports again, the integration is between iTax and ICMS. The status of that custom entry number has to be settled or removed. It cannot be pending removal or any other status. It is purely settled or removed for you to actually have that um, data set availed for you. Section F with VAT PIN 1, we're talking about local, the basic 16% transactions we are having. You bought from someone at general rated, that is the data set. Now, there is also Section H, which is for zero rated purchases. The CSV will also be the same. Now, allow me to just briefly go back and capture something from something I want to show you here. I'll not open the specific CSV, but I just want to capture something. If you look at my screen, you can see here section F, I have two CSVs. I have section F with VAT PIN 1, and then I have section F without PIN and non-VAT PIN 1. Now, when does this scenario happen? What kind of invoices are captured in this? Picture a scenario whereby you have gone and bought something from a taxpayer who is not registered for VAT, but at the point of invoicing, they charged VAT. I hope that makes sense. So they are not registered for VAT, but they are charging VAT, which is an illegality. I know one of our solutions has the capability to allow that, but it's being affixed to limit um, only VAT registered taxpayer can only issue invoices that have a VAT element to it. So for this particular CSV, you'll realize you bought something from someone who's not registered for VAT, but they charged 16%. So that data will be there, but it's useless data because you cannot even import it in the return. Because ideally for purchases, it has to be registered to registered. So by virtue of the fact that that taxpayer is not registered for VAT, we are just giving you this data, but it is not data that you can use. Now, the same as section H, you can see I have without PIN and non-VAT PIN one, the same logic applies. You went and bought something from someone who's not registered for VAT, but they charged 0% on that particular transaction. The data sets, the invoices will be packaged for you and captured and actually put in that CSV file because your PIN was captured during invoicing. Section I, the same thing applies. Again, did business with someone, they exempted it, and then who's not registered, exemption was it was exempted at the point of invoicing, you can the CSV will be availed. So I needed to just explain those other CS. It's not common for most people, but it can happen. So if you're finding those CSV files and you don't know what they mean, basically that is it. So I will move away from that. I think that is an enough explanation. Maybe just give you a run through of the return. Let me just capture the pin. The return period too always comes blank. The reason is it is a trigger to align with the Finance Act as it is, which is now basically the 2020. Okay, we have the Tax Law Amendment 2024, but the last Finance Act was for 2023. So if I was to capture November is a 30-day month. If I was to capture 30th November, then you'd notice sheet C has actually collapsed and disappeared because other rated sales is no longer in low, or rather other rated supplies are no longer in low. If you go to general rated sales sheet, this is the difference with auto-populated. Any sale transaction, B2C transaction, that is done for that CSV that we usually don't import in the return, that amount is usually availed for you in the return. Zero rated as well. If my test case had any amount here, it would have been pre-filled as well. Exempt sales, the same. Now for section F, H and I, you have to import the CSVs because this is purchases and the validations are also being done and are relevant. So with that said, I can see I'm taking too much time. Sorry about that. Allow me just to take you through what we've done. Now, let's do a quick understanding of the VAT auto-populated return. One, you will have data autofill from eTeams. You will have data autofill from Teams and ICMS. For ICMS, specifically imports, we are working on the same, we are finalizing on the integration for export. So that one is not yet ready. What is the purpose of this? Reduces manual data entry and filing errors, aims to improve accuracy, compliance, and audit trail. I know I've had discussions with taxpayers who actually celebrate the auto-populated return because if we can get to a space where it even reduces the number of audits KRA is doing on you, it's a win also for you. So the aspect of audit trails is also something we were looking at. Of course, there's also an expectation because as much as we are availing this data for you, it is still your burden to ensure the correctness of the return before submitting. So any adjustments that need to be done for sales, you can only adjust up, you cannot adjust down. And for purchases, you can adjust down, but you cannot adjust up. So that is important to note. The product information kit for the auto-populated return, which was the request I had made earlier to my colleague Mindy. We have already done the step-by-step guide for filing of the VAT pre-populated return and the FAQ. Now, briefly, I will show you where to get it. So this is our website. If you click here, publications, at the very top, then you go to reports, guides, and manuals. I want to show you where to access the step-by-step guide. Go to page 3. If you go to page 3, this is where it is, pre-populated VAT return step-by-step guide. It's the fourth download from app, and then we published it on 28th November 2023. So if you've never used the VAT auto-populated return, that is your guide when it comes to filing of the same. Now, I want to show you where to access the detailed FAQ document that we prepared on the auto-populated return. Here it is, frequently asked questions on the auto-populated return, published on 9th July 2024. So basically, that is where everything is. There is a summarized FAQ document that we have prepared as well. I am hoping the link has also been shared. That is where you can access it. So back to the presentation. So what have we done? What have we been doing? Our last trainings were in January. We are back in April. So for the last 2 months in February and March, what have we been doing? Now, we had a concern raised post rollout on duplicated Teams invoices. The scope of this particular issue was just affecting taxpayers who are using Teams. This particular issue is in two parts. I'll touch it on both. The first one is where the same control unit invoice number was being transmitted to us. So you were finding one particular invoice being transmitted more than one. So we have to the maximum, the highest number of times that I have in my master data is 22 times. One invoice has been received 22 times. So what would ideally happen in that scenario? In the invoice checker, when you check it, we would only give you an output of one of the invoices, not the full duplicated invoices. However, when you go to download the auto-populated return, the taxable amount has been multiplied by the number of invoices we've received. So if the invoice was for 50,000 and it has come in twice, we have two of them, then the amount is 100,000. If it was a million and we have received that invoice five of them, then the amount is 5 million. Now, this issue was resolved in January 2025. The solutions had to be two. Of course, a permanent solution which stops the bleeding completely, and then a data fix for already the invoices that we have already availed in ITAC. So we were doing a cleanup of November and December and part of January invoices so that now the amounts are correct. I know communication was done internally so that those invoices, assessments are raised to do a cleanup on that in the aspect of the seller was inconvenienced because now their sales were being overstated. However, on the purchasers side, some of our taxpayers benefited on claiming input VAT that they were not entitled to, as much as the return allows you to adjust the amount downwards for purchases. The truth of the matter, most people were not doing that. They were actually not doing the right thing. So I know most of us were subjected to additional assessments in the month of January. Some were actually even placed on the VAT special table for because of discrepancies of which I'll touch later on claiming non-compliant e-Teams invoices and also this aspect. So this is a cleanup that we did. The source of the problem was not on our side. It was more of a device configuration issue. So I know that has this permanent solution is to fix the issue at source, and at source is that's where the configuration has been done. What we did as KRA is to mitigate it on the return such that your sales data is coming in correctly and you're not being inconvenienced to declare a sales amount that is not yours. Some taxpayers filed with this issue, and personally, I know I've engaged 2 or 3 taxpayers and given them the go ahead to amend their returns, but others felt that they were not comfortable in amending their returns. They would prefer waiting for the solution to be delivered then file. So in the event if you're not aware of this particular solution that was delivered, it is my hope that this sensitization leaves you informed and you're able to actually correct your returns and declare the correct liability, if there was any liability to begin with. But a disclaimer on that, if you had felt that you did not want to file, remember you're still obligated by law to inform the commissioner as to why you're not able to self assess yourself for purposes of compliance. So it is my hope that for anyone who did not file their returns in November and December, they were able to do a letter to, of course, your TSO, your account manager, and they are aware of the same because of the aspect of penalty and interest. Um, um, the second scenario for duplicated teams invoices is a little bit different. Now, this scenario is where the trader system invoice number is the same, but the matching or the control unit invoice number that has been mapped to it is different. Now, this is not an item, this is not a scenario we were resolving. I'm aware some taxpayers have been waiting for a resolution on this. It's unfortunate the proper communication had not been availed to you, in the sense that we are not fixing this. And let me explain why. If you look at our VAT return, we do not consume your ERP system invoice numbers. That was before auto-populated. That was before e-teams, before compliance and all that came into play. So your trader system invoice number is not being consumed in the return. What we are consuming is the control unit invoice number. In this particular scenario, and I'll use the next slide to actually explain it perfectly, the scenario is the control unit, what we feed in our return, is unique. So from where we sit, that is a deemed sale. It's a deemed sale. You might dispute it and say that it is not, for the aspect that the trader system invoice number is the same. And again, this is a device configuration issue, because it usually happens every time you go offline, such that when it comes back online, when the system is signing again that invoice, or rather the mapping between your OCR and our middleware, which is your device, whether it's a type C, a type B, A or D, there's the system has, it's like there's no memory that it had already signed the very, very fast invoice. So it does it again, again, again. It depends on different instances. So I've seen this scenario. I've even seen this scenario where we are having over 1,000 invoices being generated, and that is happening. Unfortunately, it's not something we're fixing. From where we sit, it's an actual sale, and the solution for that is, if you can look at my screen, this is an extract of two particular invoices that had that particular issue. If I can draw your attention to the trader system invoice number for both, you can see the control unit invoice number ends with 530, and for the second one, it ends with 273, which is a clear explanation that these are two distinctive and unique control unit invoice numbers. Now, you can even further see the invoice dates are different. In the first one that ends with 530, the date is 6th January 2025. The second one is 7th January 2025. However, what is common between the two? Whatever is common, which is what we're calling the duplicate, is the trader system invoice number 24CKEN 007214. So the expectation has been, or the waiting period has been, that we are fixing this. This is not something we're fixing, unfortunately. And the only way to correct this, if the correct invoice was the one for 530, then you issue a credit note for the invoice that ends with 273. Remember, the credit note must be generated in the exact same way that the original invoice was issued. So if you capture the PIN of the buyer, please, I beg, please capture also the PIN of the buyer when you are creating or generating that credit note. Failure to do this, you're creating a new issue, because now, instead of just generating one credit note, you'll have to do an additional two invoices just to ensure the two transactions have been reversed. You're looking at issuing another original invoice and another credit note where you're not capturing the pin of the buyer, and the other one you're capturing the pin of the buyer. So let us ensure that when you're doing credit notes, you're doing it in the same manner as you did the original invoice, because failure to that, we are actually creating new issues. So the position for this second scenario for duplicated teams invoices, again, the issue is only limited to teams, not e-teams, teams invoices. Is for this scenario, we are not fixing it. The solution is please issue credit notes that cancel out the excess. So if your trader system invoice number was mapped to 6, you do 5 credit notes because one sale is valid. I hope we're on the same page on that particular item. If you've been avoiding to file because of this, please file. Please file. Please file. Please file, because that is the solution, that is the position. Now, this was the other, actually, this is what made us not even train for 2 months. Overstated e-teams invoices. The scope of this issue was only limited to e-teams. Now, for e-teams, the scenario was affecting those who have branches. You have branches in e-team solutions, the different e-team solutions. Now, we stopped the bleeding on 15th of March 2025. Then now we had to come back and do a data fix. We had to correct the invoices that we had already availed in iTax, what you were getting on the auto-populated return. This was addressed on 28th March 2025. Now, there is a small part to this solution that is pending. The CSV files. So, of course, you're either a taxpayer who has never filed because of this particular issue. The seller, of course, is negatively affected because their sales are high, but purchasers were in a position where they would claim higher input VAT for this particular scenario, even if the system allows them to actually capture the correct taxable amount under purchases. Remember, purchases you can adjust downwards. So the system was still allowing you to do the correct thing, but I've seen in majority, 90% of the scenarios, the right thing was not done. Now, since there's the small bit that we are left to update, it is the CSV file. So you find, even right now, if you're downloading, say for example, you've not filed from November, you've logged in, you're downloading your November return and CSV files, the CSV amount, the taxable amount for those invoices is still overstated. So what I want to guide is, if you download it and the amount is 5 million and it should be a million, manually edit the amount to a million. The return will go through. Let me repeat. If you download the CSV file for sales, this is sales, and the amount is 5 million and the correct amount should be a million, kindly reduce it to a million and it will go through. I apologize in advance for making the process manual because of that particular disconnect, but the timeline for updating the CSV files would be by end of this month, which we'll work on by next week. So I apologize for that bit of gap in the solution, but so far we have confirmed the solution is working. In the event you get an invoice and you still feel like it's still overstated, even when you're manually editing, it's still not yet updated, please escalate it to your account manager at the TSO so that they can escalate it to us, then we can correct it. We corrected about 2.9 million invoices from the period September 2024 to 28th March 2025. So we were looking at about 2.9 million invoices. Now, how do you go about accessing this information? This is eTeams. eTeams, you have Z reports. That one I know. You have your Z reports, which can act as a source of information for these invoices. You can also use the invoice checker, but I feel like the amount of gymnastics and backward calculation for you to get the correct position is a bit too much, especially if you're trading in more than one an item that or items that have different tax rates. So you have general rated, zero rated, exempt. I feel like that would be a bit more tedious for you. So I would want to recommend just rely on your Z reports, and your account manager can also extract your sales report if you're the seller, so that you're able to capture the correct amount. The manual edit applies both to the seller and the purchaser. So if the purchaser um, has to amend, this is an official communication to anyone who enjoyed the 90% of us who enjoyed these overstated invoices. Please, please, let's amend our returns. I say that because once we have finalized on updating the CSV files and the data, the master data has been shared internally with the team that actually handles revenue mobilization. I know because I saw it in January happening. Assessments will happen in May, either May or June. But I know by end of the financial year, those assessments will be raised. So it will be quite unfortunate to be caught up in a situation where you're having assessment raised against you just because we couldn't do the right thing. So if you've been enjoying those excess input VATs, please kindly, please, because I know even with the March 2025 return, which is what you're currently filing, the CSV files are not updated. So for purchasers, claim the correct amount. Claim to the extent that is you are entitled to, because the amount for the taxable field for purchases is adjustable downwards. Your return will go through. Of course, we keep on supporting you. And as I stated earlier, if you have actually have a case I got yesterday, which I'm still analyzing, if you get an invoice that you feel that was left out in the 2.9 million invoices, please share it with your account manager. We will fix it for you and provide guidance on you filing. Next, the other issue that had really come up was the dropping of the pin of buyer for anyone who was using the Android PDA or tablet. Now, what was happening at the point of the taxpayer transmitting invoices to us, there was a mishap where all the details were not speaking, specifically the PIN of the buyer. So when it's transmitted to us, it doesn't have the PIN of the buyer. And of course, when we avail it or we avail it in the auto-populated return, the PIN of the buyer is not there. So the noise was not even from the seller. The complaint was from the purchasers. So you're in business with someone, you expect to claim input VAT. You can't claim it because your PIN was never captured. So I'm aware of that issue. We fixed it, or rather, there was an APK file that was done for this particular solutions. The version is 1.0.7.5, and we usually publish this on our KRA website. Again, allow me to quickly show you where you can get it on our website. So if you're in it, if because it's an eTeam solution, you click on eTeams on our website. This particular APK file was on page 3. It's here. eTeams PayPoint Android version 1.0.75, published on 28th February 2025. So that is where you access it. So I'll just go back to my presentation. So what did this mean? So any taxpayer who was using Android PDA was supposed to install the APK file on their solution without uninstalling the existing version. Then what next? What were the next steps? The next steps were you were to retransmit all the affected invoices again to Kenya Revenue Authority, which would update up one part of let's say where we store our invoices. Now, the only thing that is pending in this solution, because it was a two-part solution, was updating of the same on iTax, which we have not done. And I've seen a lot of emails from taxpayers where they say they have done all these steps, they have done the retransmission, but still there's an attribute that they still cannot claim, their clients cannot claim input VAT. That is something we're working on, hopefully fixing by end of the month. I feel like I've overpromised there, but we will try maybe mid-May fix that particular issue. Then, of course, communication will go out to our taxpayers on the same, so that claiming of input VAT happens. Now, there has been a lot of concern of, okay, the 6-month rule, we are running out of time, so what happens? For invoices affected in November, you can amend the November 2024 return and capture input VAT. If it's December, you can even capture all of them as long as the tax periods align in one particular return, and then now, of course, approval's done. But we are trying our best to ensure that the 6 month window um, does not elude you and you're not disadvantaged in any way. I proceed. Now, understated e-teams invoices. This was another issue that came out post rollout, where again the scope of invoices are purely e-teams. When I say e-teams, it's the one that starts with KRA CU, the alphanumeric invoices. Teams are purely numeric, 19 characters in length. E-teams are alphanumeric. KRA CU, then the first digits, the first characters before the slash are 15. The slash is the 16th character, and anything after that is actually the invoice number. So that is the scope I'm looking at. Now, why this is still an open issue is because we have resolved it. We resolved it in December. Why it's still an issue was the data fix went before the permanent fix. What does that mean? The bleeding came after. The correction of existing data happened before the bleeding was stopped. So that window between the data fix of the existing data and the permanent bleeding was stopped, there's some invoices that were left out. We're looking at about 1 million invoices. So those invoices are the invoices that we want to correct, and then now, of course, they are claimable. They're mainly for the month of December, not November. November, the cleanup was good. So I know that car window was because the delivery was in December 2024. So that window affects invoices just for December, which I know the solution is ready. It's something we can deliver even by end of the month. Let's have a discussion about our utility companies and the this continuous complaints we still keep on receiving. Let's discuss KPLC. Now, KPLC issued a public notice on 21st January requesting all customers to submit their PINs. From where I sit and from where we sit, our assumption is this is no longer an issue because if you have submitted your details as per the gazette notice or the public notice, then you should be okay. However, from my session on Monday, I've gotten a few communications from taxpayers, some taxpayers, even in LTO, who say, Grace, that as we've not been sorted, my data is still not yet um, my invoices are still having gaps. Now, it means it's a conversation again. We need to pick it up with KPLC. The reason as to why even that public notice was issued was after a sit down and intervention from KRA. We actually listened to our taxpayers because I remember in November, this was really heated in our trainings. When we were doing our trainings in December, this was a really, really big issue. And we created a bridge where we sat with them, we had a discussion, and this was one of the action points on their end that they really need to update their records with your pins because there's no going back. This affects both your VAT and income tax because the same rule that we are applying in the auto-populated return will apply in your IT as well when you're filing returns. The validations might not yet have been implemented in the system, but I guarantee you, when you're having compliance checks being done, audits being done, if you're having expenses that are declared in your IT return and they're not supported with an ETIMS invoice, automatic disallowance, and it will really put you in a bad spot. So again, I feel like maybe we might need to pick it up. It's a discussion we'll have internally on how to go, but there's a clarification that needs to come out clearly. Since this, I think most of the invoices were corrected for January 2025 on their end, where the European was being captured, it means November and December have gaps in terms of the PIN. That is not something we can fix even by understanding their business system, their business solution, their billing system. It's not something we can even come in and try off an olive branch and see how we can fix it. It's not doable. So November, December, kindly still pick it up with Kenya Power. It's not something that KRA is assisting with in terms of resolution. So we proceed to that. Was actually, I actually even put a, I had to look for this gazette are noticed so that we know this auto-populated return is real and it's here and it might not be going anywhere. So if we can work on how we are invoicing, then our filing experience becomes better. So this is actually the gazette notice or public notice that came from Kenya Power on records to be shared. Now, let's discuss KPA because this is also another that keeps on coming up. There exists, as we speak, there exists an integration between KPA and customs. Now, KPA is able to consume a custom entry from us, whether it is there's deconsolidation in it or not. Now, the custom entry will have the consignee details. Um, if we look at it from that angle, then you should not be having gaps in your invoices from KPA. So I want to address this from the consignees um, part. Grace is importing something from Japan or even vehicles from Japan. In the, of course, there's, if I've filled a few containers, I'll have a master bill of lading, which is my contractual agreement. Then now you also have the customs entry, which will be raised by customs. In that customs entry, my details, me who's the claimant, will be captured. So they are able to consume and get your PIN details from the customs entry. So this should not be an issue. When it comes to deconsolidation, you have one container, we are like 10 people, importers are 10. Each of us need to claim. Again, even in that scenario, there's a breakdown of that custom entry to what we're calling the house manifest that each consignee gets. And then now that is what is used to generate the customs entry individually. Because remember, we did a public notice in 2021 that still stands about the claiming of input VAT by trade agents. That was the wording on the notice. Trade agents here represent clearing agents and shipping agents. So the directive was very clear from KRA that who is supposed to be invoiced in terms of the aspect of claiming input VAT. And we made it clear clearing agents, because as Grace, I can't go clear my own goods. I need to get someone, a clearing agent, to do it for me. They are not allowed legally to actually claim that input VAT. So it's me, the consignee, who's supposed to do it. And I think that is what those conversations ended up in the birth of this particular integration. So this should be a non-issue from where we sit. However, we are still having discussions as well internally with customs to also understand how better grasp as DTD, okay, sorry, not DTD, DTD is not there anymore. So as LMT, MST, to understand how, in a scenario where this is happening at a CFS, how that happens. Because at the point of your goods moving to a CFS, there's no customs entry. So that, I know it's a discussion that is ongoing, but I guarantee you, because we keep on really getting a lot of complaints on KPA, we might result in having not another, a meeting with them, again, as a way, as a sign of an olive branch for our taxpayers, so that you're not inconvenienced, similar to what we did with KPLC. We proceed in the interest of time. I have very few minutes. Safaricom. Safaricom invoices where there is excise duty applied. Now, these particular invoices are still an issue. So we are looking at November, December, January, February, March. Yes, you are still getting only 85% of the input VAT. There's still a gap of the 15%. Reason being, there was an issue at source from Safaricom side where that particular excise duty has not been properly computed. Uh, have we fixed the issue? No. Have we offered an olive branch to assist to fix the issue? Yes. But there's how the data we want it provided that is creating a delay so that we avail this fix for them. Now they have confirmed they have fixed the issue on their end, and moving forward from 1st April 2025 in their next billing, I've even sampled two or three of those invoices myself personally. and we confirm the invoices are now being captured correctly, and you'll be able to claim the full 100% input VAT from those invoices. So for Safaricom, again, KRA is not responsible for the issue, but we have offered an olive branch to help fix the problem. Once they are able to provide the data the way we have given guidance, then we will do our part and honor our olive branch in terms of fixing November, December, January, February, and March invoices. So we are looking at 5 months. Now, what have we also been doing on the return side? That was invoice. This is now on the return. We did a renaming, of course, the tax law amendment 2024. So um, is it the deletion, the removal of DST, and we saw the introduction of significant economic presence tax on 27th December. So with that, we did a relabeling of the CSV file for Section F from Section F DST to Section F digital supply. Next was the character length of our invoice number in terms of in the return. How many characters can the return consume? So we did an increase to 40 characters. This was affecting all the sheets. So B, D, E, F, H, and I. And also B and F because they have a credit notes declaration. Of course, now it was also affecting the columns where we capture the relevant invoice number. So the character length has been standardized for all the sheets, and we are looking at accommodating 40 characters. When we get to a point where we have hit that limit, we will make the changes then. A lot of concerns had been raised. We actually picked this issue from this sensitization. So there are always also a blessing on our end where you were not getting the CSV files for zero rated purchases. I know I have that has been confirmed by some of the taxpayers I support, and they are now getting this particular CSV file and they are okay with it. It was not affecting your VAT position because these are zero rated purchases, but for purposes of your own reconciliation, even audits being done, it's important to have all the data sets imported in your return. Next, we did an enhancement on the system error message for credit notes. This was crippling most of us. At the point of filing the return, because now we made credit notes under purchases mandatory for declaration, it was not coming out clear what was expected of you from that message, what you needed to declare. And then now you're finding scenarios where the credit note has your PIN, the original doesn't have. You're trying to introduce the original so that it balances off, and it doesn't work out like it actually doesn't work like that. So we did an enhancement on that system message just to give proper guidance on what you need to do. So the new format is credit note number. Okay, credit note, this mapped to relevant invoice number, this with relevant invoice date, this as per the TINs or ETINs data is not declared. Please declare it. And since we did this enhancement, even the queries on it have significantly reduced when it comes to issues on credit notes around in the sheet F or section F of the return. Next, input claims are from DST SEP taxpayers. This was affecting a very small pool of taxpayers. It would only affect anyone who's done business with someone in the digital space. So what was happening, if they file their original return, of course you get the CSV on your side as a purchaser. But if they go and, for example, Bolt goes and amends their return in iTax, on this other side, me, Grace, who's done the business with them, my CSV data was not updating. So I would still have the data from the very first return, which is the original return, which was not correct. So you would find you're getting so many errors when you're in that particular solution. So, I mean, sorry, in that particular position. So what we did is we did an enhancement just to ensure that when they amend the return and it is approved, the same update is reflected on your side. Next was negative sales in sheet B, D, and E. The reason as to why we did this change was in the space we are in with the auto-populated, a lot of credit notes are being issued. Mistakes are happening. The only way to correct it is through credit notes. So you're finding yourself in a particular tax period, your credit notes are even surpassing your actual original invoices, and you're always having a negative value as your output VAT. So the cells in the return could not actually accommodate, the lump sum amounts could not accommodate a negative value. And with that, that was one of the enhancements we did so that you were able to file your return. These enhancements were done in February. Now, the next two slides mean the same. Blank fields in VAT return and claiming of non-ETIMS teams invoices. This is what brought an uproar in January. Now, we did filing of using the auto-populated return in November, December. As much as we allow you to do the filing using that, we also do our own monitoring. And there was a lot of mess. There were scenarios where non-valid input VAT was being claimed, which was wrong. It was happening, it was unfortunate, but we needed to close up those loopholes. So we did that in January, and the outcome of that was anyone who had done that be subjected to additional assessment. I know there's a particular TSO who put their taxpayers on the VAT special table because of this, because it was taking away from revenue. So this is another compliance. The tuliziba izoshimo. We were closing those holes that were being used to actually not do the correct thing. If you're a victim of this, well, I don't know what to say. Makosa ilifanyika, makosa ilifanywa, na as an authority, we also had to take measures on how to recover the revenue we had lost. So that is there. That was the other enhancement that we did for claiming of non-ETIMS teams invoices and also for blank returns. Now, before we get to the Q&A, kindly, I want to do some clarifications. Sorry. Sorry about that. I want to mention something. We make a lot of fuss about the pin of the buyer being captured when it comes to the auto-populated return. But this fuss has not come with the return. This fuss has come with a law. If you look at the Tax Procedures Electronic Tax Invoice Regulations, specifically Section 7, I'll just scroll to Section 7, highlight D. I hope that is visible. So there's, if you start with 7, tax invoices, credit notes, and debit notes. So it's all the 3 types of invoices. Each electronic tax invoice generated from a system shall contain. It's not might, may, it's shall contain, where the buyer intends to claim the expense or the input tax, the buyer's personal identification number must be there. This is where the whole fuss that comes from us insisting if you need to claim input VAT, this is why. Your PIN must have been captured at the point of invoicing. Otherwise, you cannot claim it. It is not something that is imposed by the return. It is us imposing the law on the return, implementing the law on the return. If your PIN is not there, you do not claim input VAT. This not only affects your VAT return, but also your income tax return. Please take note of the same. It's not KRA who has brought their own rules, no. Where we can implement the law in terms of compliance and we implement it in the return, definitely we will do it. So that implementation, the reason as to why we are so particular about that, it is something that is actually in the electronic tax invoice regulations of 2024. Now, I need to make 2 other clarifications and quickly do a Q&A. I know we are bad on time. No, we are not bad on time. We're supposed to end at 4:30. We're good on time. So I will end, I'll make sure I end at 4. Now, I want to clarify on item number 1. I know there is a manual exercise, for lack of a better word, that you need to do when you're declaring a credit note under sales. And this is the scenario I want you to have. I am a seller, a registered VAT seller. I issue an original invoice to my client. I fail to capture the PIN. Then, for whatever reason, not for whatever reason, they come to me and complain. In line with the regulations I just showed you, I'm not able to claim my input VAT. And then when we check, I failed. I made a mistake. I didn't capture your PIN. So I want to correct it. I issue a credit note so that once I issue the credit note, I'm able to give you a replacement. So basically, this credit note and the original invoice that didn't have the PIN becomes a paper transaction. Money really hasn't been exchanged. Services or goods have not been exchanged. It's more of a paper transaction. So I come, issue a credit note. Then guess what I do? I capture your PIN. I'm introducing a PIN where the original invoice didn't have a PIN. It's a full credit note and I've introduced a PIN. So what happens? Now, in that scenario, this CSV file written section B with VAT PIN 1 will carry the credit note. This other CSV file, section B without PIN and non-VAT PIN 1, will carry the original invoice. You see, two invoices for the same transaction in two different CSV files. The one I'm highlighting is not imported on the return. But this is where we do the importation. This is what you import on the return. Now, when you do that import, I know you will get a system error message because of that credit note or all the number of credit notes that have that particular scenario. Because what the system is doing, it's looking for the original. Remember, credit note reduces your output. Before we grant you access in the return, for you to reduce your output VAT, we must ensure the respective output VAT was declared to begin with. So it's looking for it, but it can't see it because of the line item validations. It's looking for it, but it can't see it. So you keep on getting error messages because of that credit note. And it's usually in the aspect of relevant invoice number, this with relevant invoice date, this is not in the current return, or if it also does a check in the last 6 months, because remember, you would have issued the original maybe in February, the credit note is coming in March, and now it also needs to check 6 months back. Did we get that money? Did we get that output VAT? So it will check in the current return, but it will also check in previous returns depending on the tax points for the two invoices. Now, this is what I want to get. When you get that error message, this is what I want you to do. Assuming this particular, the one I'm highlighting, is one that is giving me a headache when I'm filing, it keeps on being rejected. And I need to declare it because I want to reduce my output. So what do I do? This is what I want you to do. You will manually delete. Manually. There's an exercise here. You will manually delete. I've gotten out my calculator. You will manually delete it as a line item in the CSV file that you are importing in the return. So I will just highlight and delete it. Its amount is 33,121.65. Need to remember that. 33,121.65. Now, I will delete it like that. Then, because I don't want to lose as a taxpayer, because it's a credit, it's a negative, it reduces my output. I come back to my return here. It's section B. The guidance I'm giving applies for B, D, and E for the three, but I know the impact is on B because of 16%. Now, my total lump sum is 7,044,000 and 10.24. My credit note was for 33,121.65. So what I do so that I don't lose, I reduce. The word is I reduce. It's a negative value. My lump sum amount by the same equivalent amount. So it is 33,121.65. I'm doing it on my calculator. Sorry. So 7044 010 24.65. So my amount changes and reduces to 7,010,000 888.59, and that becomes my new lump sum amount. So that credit note that keeps on giving you a headache because the original is not in the CSV file should manually be removed from the CSV you're importing. What most of us have been doing, which is where the mistake is, that credit note, let me undo this. Nakata. That credit note, what we are doing most of us is, it has an invoice here. This is the original number. What we are doing, we come to manually capture this invoice here as a line item hapa mwisho. For example, hata ningeka tu hapo juu. Sorry. Let me insert. What we are doing when we are filing the return, because your credit note inakula kichwa, this invoice, which is the original, you come and introduce it here as a line item, which is a mistake. Remember the rules. Remember the rules do not change. If the PIN of the buyer was never captured, you cannot introduce it as a line item in the CSV that you are importing. That invoice is rejected. So now you have two new errors because that original invoice will be rejected and it has already been catered in the other CSV file that we don't import. And now the credit note is still being rejected. You're compounding on the system error messages. So for that particular scenario, for the three sections B, D, and E, please know that is the solution. Allow me to quickly touch on something I had forgotten that I know keeps on coming up a lot. This is section D. Remember, D has two parts. There's D1, there's D2. D1 is local or exempt. Even if you come here on the type of sales, you'll see that local and exemption. Then there's D2. D2 exports. Exports. Ile mzigo inatoka, it's moving borders or it's within the border, but it is to an EPZ or an SEZ. Please note, we are not providing this CSV file for now. I need to add that disclaimer for now. The reason as to why that CSV file, because I saw it in it came up on Monday, we availed it till for the month of November. By the time you are filing your returns on 20th December 2025, the tax law amendment had not been enacted to law, which was done on 27th. Now that tax law amendment introduced a time of supply for exports where we need to validate the certificate of export, certificate of exports, and any other document provided by customs. That additional part would mean or translate to certificate of receipt, which is what you get when you are exporting to an SCZ or an EPZ. You would also have an exit note or an approval notification for any good that is going to EAC region. So there are four, basically. International waters, definitely, SEZ, EPZ, or EAC region. So those are the documents we require to validate in the return. So we are still, we have an ongoing integration that is in progress between ICMS and iTax that would allow us to validate this. Once we have achieved this, then for sure we shall return the CSV file for section D2 and the subsequent validations. Because if you remember, in for filing of the November return, we were also validating this amount here, the total amount for D2 and the total section D1 total and D2, which we're still doing, but you're only validating using D1. So when we return it, we will align it with the law. When did the law come into effect? 27th December 2024. So of course we will do it from December 2024. So please take note of that. The other thing I wanted to touch on quickly is a very big concern on invoice dates. there's a lot on invoice date. I'll address it in two parts. There's aspect of you doing your own reconciliation and at the point of you importing your CSV files. Now, this is a genuine CSV file. I downloaded and altered data. When you download the CSV file from the auto-populated return, the format of that invoice number is date, month, year. So we are looking at 29th November 2024. That is our distinctive date format for both the CSV file and the return itself. Now, for some of us, we have different date and time settings on our tools of trade, whatever you're using to file your returns, be it a laptop, be it a desktop. So you're finding that your settings are mapped as month, date, and year. So what happens is this. When you open your CSV file, everything is correct. There's no issue. You leave and save it. However, when you import this CSV file, when you have your date settings as month, date, and year, there's a transposition of the date and the month. So what will happen, that same invoice here in the return for section B, I know that CSV is a bit heavy, so I'm avoiding importing it. What will happen, that invoice was particularly 29th November 2024. The invoice number will be 1129 2024. For some of us are able to catch it quickly and see, even when you're submitting the return and those all your invoices are rejected, you can catch it because there is no invoice date like 11th 29. There's no month like 29. So it's a bit easier to pick it out. But you'll find you go correct the ones that really stand out, you forget the rest. Then now the complaint is, you guys, your data is wrong. It's being, how are you giving us data? Then when we import in the return, it is being rejected. It's not that the data is being rejected. It's because your date settings in your laptop have altered our data. Our data is good. It is spot on in terms of how it should be, how it's mapped to how the return is. So please ensure before you import your CSVs, the date settings in your laptop, your tools of trade are dates dd/mm/yyyy. Kindly. What other bottlenecks have I seen? Now, reconciliation. Reconciliation, what do I mean? You have accessed our data. When you have accessed our data, what you realize is you need to do your reconciliation. Remember what I said earlier? You need to do the ensure that your data is correct. Then you can make the relevant adjustments. Now, when you're doing your reconciliation, you do your reconciliation against your ERP system data, which is fine. I have no issues with that. But from what I've seen and all the engagements we've had, the dates that you book an invoice most times on your ERP system is very different with the file that is sent to KRA from the middleware to KRA, which you call the JSON file. And that really, really, when we rolled it out, that was the biggest uproar because most of us were saying, I declared these invoices in October. How are they in my auto-populated data in November? Now, invoices that were being issued on 30th, 31st October, you were finding them in November with the date 1st, 2nd, 3rd, some 4th, 5th, different dates in November. And I remember us taking a hit because I remember those trainings that we are altering data. We don't alter data, baby. Even the transmission date that you see on the invoice checker, and for those of us who've been able to even get a view of your JASPA reports from your account manager, your transmission date doesn't feature anywhere. It doesn't even touch or affect your invoice date. So when you're doing your reconciliation, what I want to guide is do your reconciliation. It is your responsibilities, it is your right. But when you confirm that that invoice is spot on, iko sawa, check. Taxable amount, check. retain our data. Please, please, please avoid replacing our data with your ERP system data. And most of the time, the issue comes from the dates. I have seen it. Most taxpayers have agreed, yes, there's a difference. I know why there's a difference, that difference for sure. But we work with what has been transmitted to us and not what is in your ERP system. The bare minimum checks would be the invoice is there, a taxable amount is fine. PIN of the person you were selling to, if you realize you make the mistake, ulieka pin ya mtu mwingine instead ya huyu, then you need to correct that. And you can only correct that in that particular tax period by issuing credit notes with the correct PIN details. But please, please, if you do your reconciliation, I guide and I beg, because I've seen it help most people, especially LTO taxpayers, because I find myself working a lot with LTO taxpayers. Please retain our data. As long as all the other checks tick, 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 retain our data. It will save you so many error messages. So many. Because every time I get those screenshots when I'm doing my analysis, the issue is the invoice dates. And I know it's because you have captured or you have replaced using the data in your ERP instead of our data. That is what I would guide. That is my advice. 4 minutes. What else did I want to touch on? I think that's it. If I remember something else, I'll add on it. But for now, I think I'm content with what I have explained, with what I have guided. And from my tax pocket to yours, I hope this session has been beneficial. But I would like to return the session back to Mandy for the next steps of the sensitization as we enter our Q&A session. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Grace. Many appreciations in the chat coming through. So we appreciate you for that, taking us through the last 1.5 hours thereabout, and for keeping time. I think the bulk of the questions, the bulk of the thematic areas have been largely addressed by the team who are on standby in the Q&A. So in case you have a question that is yet to be responded to and hasn't been addressed while the presentation was ongoing, please feel free to post that once again, and we will be responding in the next few minutes. I think, Grace, if I can give you just a short break, in case we have anyone from the eTIMS team, we have Vicky or Caroline or Annalyn. There's a question, if there's a question, comment, or concern that is eTIMS related, frequently occurring, that has that you feel you could answer, unmute and answer for the benefit of all, we would appreciate that, and then we can proceed with the other bulk of the questions. But just as a heads up, Grace, I think the bulk of the questions were answered at various points. It's just this pain point of taxpayers who state that the invoices that they have, whether sales or purchases, are meeting all the conditions that we have been stating in the previous sessions. Yet, when auto-population, when it comes to auto-population, they're either not auto-populating or are being rejected at different points. So just as a heads up, I think that is the first question we'll start with. But in the meantime, I don't know if Caroline or Vicky or Annalyn might step in to say make a quick comment that is eTIMS related.
Thank you so much, Mandy. I hope you can hear me from your end.
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Much is to appreciate Grace for the good job that she's done. And I think she has covered so much, even from the eTIM side. What we can say is there are few things we have captured here and there, and we have seen on the chat box, I think a number of questions that have been coming through, mostly were for unread PDA, which actually Grace mentioned, and not even mentioned, she really emphasized on the same, on how to go about it. And I think most of our taxpayers were struggling with the same, which we have the PDA unread dropping pins. So at the end of the day, we have now the mitigation of having an updated unread solution that is on our website. So I think other than that, even our other user guides are also on the website for updating, even for the e-client. So in case there are other taxpayers who are experiencing the same, they can always have that with the step-by-step guide on how to go about it. And then I think something else I can mention is somebody was talking about having integrator issues. And maybe actually here I can highlight on the enhancements. Currently, we are ensuring that eTIMS is the most, we are trying to make it as most, like the easiest solution to have from KRA, whereby you are able to enjoy our platforms in various ways, like um, when it comes to integrators, if you're having even issues with integrators, you can integrate with different various integrators from our end. So that's one of our enhancements that we have actually enhanced. Not forgetting that we're even having our taxpayers able to be on different solutions. You can be on the eTIMS software, eClient solution, and you can also invoice at the same time on online solution. And what we are looking forward currently is even trying to make it even easier when it comes to we are looking at a point that we are able to do that even on eCitizen. You can invoice from everywhere, meaning that at the end of the day, what you're looking into is to make it seamless and you can access any solution at the same time or different times and be able to have a seamless invoicing solution. We just want it to be very easy for you, just like the way we go to banks and just be able to you can withdraw from your ATM, you can withdraw from your M-Pesa, you can withdraw from maybe even just a dial. So that's what we are looking into. So those are the enhancements that we have, not forgetting that we're also looking, we have our buyer initiated and reverse invoicing, which we have been sensitizing about when it comes to taxpayers who are not able to do invoicing by themselves. So as a buyer, you can initiate this invoice so that the person you're dealing with can be able to have invoicing as required by law. Another thing also I think we've seen is more of I've seen questions on missing pins or maybe having eTIMS, non-eTIMS invoices. So I have some questions here where one is asking, someone did not have an eTIMS invoice and they're looking into it on how to claim it. So unfortunately, I think even Grace has mentioned why we keep giving pins and all it's because we need you to claim these expenses, and it's required by law to have items generated invoices for you to claim. So for purchases that are not eTIMS or TIMS invoices, unfortunately, they are not. They'll be flagged off from the system. Another thing is that we've seen something about the special table, and it seems that there's some taxpayers who are on a special table. And when find yourself on special table, there are a number of things that could uh, as a result, because probably there are some things that you've not done from your end. And here we advise you to visit your tax office so that you can be advised on why you're on special table. And the moment you are on special table, even when you make a sale, now you are the people who are selling, I mean, you're making a purchase, the people who are buying from you will not be able to claim. So at the end of the day, you're inconveniencing them. So I think we can say you visit your account managers for support and guidance on the same. And I think as I conclude, talking of account managers, I think what you're looking into here is to make sure that you're able to have a very seamless way of doing your returns. And with all maybe the challenges, the errors, I think Grace has done her very best to show you where maybe these challenges are coming from. Sometimes you'll be having this maybe on your platform, maybe you're having issues with your CSVs, you're still having issues with overstated sales or something like that. Yes, we advise you to make sure you have um, gotten to your account managers to support you on the same, so that at the end of the day, they're the ones to help you even on the return when it comes to amendments. So let them be aware of the same. and they guide you in to how to go about it. So please loop your account managers so that they can give you a go ahead and how to go about it in each and every challenge that you'll be having. I think so far, I would say most of the things were captured by Grace and Mandy. Let me just say from eTeam's team, I think that's what we have.
All right. Thank you very much, Caroline. Thank you for addressing those eTIMS related queries and others, even special table and the like. So we appreciate you also just being on standby together with Vicky and Modoni from the eTIMS team to respond to queries. Allow me to take it back to you, Grace, and also a big thank you to Lee and Georgina. I know you've been trying your best where possible to respond to the queries coming up so that we can save time towards the end. So maybe, Grace, I can request you to start with that most frequently occurring issue. Taxpayers are stating that they have confirmed that the invoices that they either receive based on their purchases or have made a sale with are via the invoice checker transmitted and buyer PIN appears. They issue their buyer PIN when they are making the purchases. They've met several conditions. However, when it comes to the auto-populated return, the invoices are not generating. And when they try to add them manually, certain errors are appearing. Maybe you can just speak to that issue overall of what could be the other possible workaround that they may pursue to be able to enjoy their input VAT and or have their sales be accurate and have a good seamless interaction with their suppliers in the market. Thanks, Grace.
Thanks, Mindy, for that question. I'll respond to that question in three parts, just to navigate on how, or just to better understand how to address it. Now, one, there's a rule of thumb with the auto-populated return, and I even said it on Monday when I was training. I wish I can put a banner on iTax on that thumb of rule. Your data is not static. Always remember that. Today is 16th of April 2025. If you have any intention of filing your VAT return today, even after this session, the time for you to download the auto-populated return is today. If you downloaded it yesterday, the day before, a few days ago, or even 1st of April, your data has changed. We keep on incrementing and adding invoices on a daily basis. This is both eTeams, Teams invoices, and imports, because imports have a settlement date or a removal date. If the settlement date is today, then that import will be available to you for claiming tomorrow, not today. Migrating that data or availing that data on the auto-populated return happens a day plus one. So the first reason could be because I have had that discussion with actually an eTeams officer yesterday, and the challenges they were having and the issues they're having with their purchases, I actually just told her straight up, without even giving me the return, your taxpayer downloaded that return between 1st April and 5th April. Because I know when I took the solution to production for fixing whatever they were saying. So the fact that they were encountering that challenge on the 15th of April was already a clear indication to me they've never downloaded their return again. Your data is not static. That is a rule of thumb. Never forget it. Number two, Teams, when it comes to Teams invoices, again, the numeric invoices, uh, if there's one solution I know is very stable with invoices is Teams. That one I can I am 98% sure. So if it is Teams invoices, I am suspecting another scenario that we have seen happening where there's some specific mandatory parameters that we need to receive on our end in that particular JSON file that I keep on mentioning, which from, of course, when you're having your OCR connected to our middleware and then now the transmission happens to KRA, there's some specific fields. If they come null, I'm not able to avail that data to you, for you. I've seen a few taxpayers. There's one taxpayer who was really affected. November, December, all their invoices became useless. For the seller, it's not an issue because you can put it as a lump sum, but it becomes an issue to the purchaser. So for that, I think we also need to work hand in hand with eTeams on, and even our technical team on the re-emphasis on the fields that must be there in that particular file. Otherwise, when they come null, we really can't avail that data to you. E-teams is where I know there's a bit of gap here and there, where some invoices, yes, when you check on the invoice checker, they're there, but they're not available on the auto-populated. What most of our taxpayers have been doing, and we've been correct, the minute we get that communication, we usually update. But I know we are as a team on our end, KRA team, we want to do a global diagnostic on all invoices so that we ensure they are available. But if you have an invoice that you check on the invoice checker, you've downloaded, the first check is download your return leo 16th April 2025. I've downloaded. When I look at my data, especially purchases, when I look for that invoice, it's not in my purchase because the issue is usually on purchases. It's not on my purchase CSV, which is section F. It's also in the invoice checker, but I can't see it in the auto-populated. Please escalate it. Escalate it to your account manager. We will analyze if it's like now how what I've explained with the team's invoice. If it has an issue, then we'll just tell you why we cannot avail this particular invoice, and you need to issue a replacement for your supplier. For such invoices, we, especially for those one that cannot be availed in the auto-populated, they really don't need a credit note. But you can do a credit note because of your books, because whatever is in your books needs to align with what is in the return. So that is important, so that when an audit is being done, it doesn't look like two invoices were generated for the same sale. So you can issue a credit note, but it is for balancing your books. It really doesn't affect the return, because if you issue that credit note when you're still having a challenge, and that issue for null values, it's actually a device issue. I always celebrate a taxpayer who, when we sit with them, we guide them on where the issue. When they go back to their device supplier, they sit with their device supplier and they fix the issue. They're like, yeah, Grace, the issue was on our end. I celebrate that taxpayer, because you are far much ahead than anyone who says, no, KRA is the issue. KRA is, I can tell you our issues automatically, and I can tell you what is pending, what is not, and what we have done. And I've already taken you through what we have done. But for the issue of missing, if it's not, you've downloaded today, it's not there, invoice checker, it is there, please escalate it to your account manager. They'll escalate it to our office. We will do an update of the same. That is usually immediate. It doesn't need to happen the next day. The minute we get the request, it is done immediately. So that would be my guidance on the same. So the scenarios are vast. I can't give a blanket response, but I've given a response based on the different scenarios I have encountered and the different analysis I have done. Mandy, if you'd allow me, I've been able to scan through some of the questions, and I would want to respond. This issue of misclassification is still coming up. That you are exporting, the data for export has come as D1. Again, issue of HS codes. Any item, any goods, any service that does not meet 16% criteria, or rather the first schedule or the second schedule of the VAT Act, has a HS code. It has a HS code. For teams, I know you consume the HS code. For e-teams, you use the UNSPS. That is what usually gives me a challenge. UNSPSC codes, the international ones. Now, if you're getting your HS codes wrong, your data will be wrong. You will never use a HS code if you use a HS code for exports, it will come as export, but you won't get that CSV. If you use a HS code for even the scenario for exempt, again, because they also have HS codes, if you interchange, your data is wrong. I can't correct that. I can't go into the system and correct that. There's no solution for that. The solution is credit note with the erroneous HS code, again, to cancel the original invoice, then do a replacement with the correct HS code. HS codes are so important, so critical for anyone who's trading in zero rated sales and exempt sales. There's another item that is usually there. again, this is information for your technical guys. In the JSON file, there's a place for tax rates. If you get that part wrong, if you capture null to represent a zero-rated invoice instead of zero, you've done a swap in your data. So all issues of misclassification do not arise from KRA, they originate from source. If the mistake is done at source, your data is, for lack of a better word, dirty at the point of you getting your auto-populated return. That is it. I wish I've worked on this project for close to 2 years, and I cannot emphasize enough how important it is for us to ensure that, especially after what happened in February 2024, us seeing it switch off, that thing was so painful. And the correctness of data is very particular for us. Where we have done a mistake, we own up to it and we fix it. But when the issue is at source, even if I want, I can't fix it. If you're getting your HS codes wrong or your UNSPSC codes wrong, your data is wrong. The problem is at source, it's not at KRA. So I've seen that still come up a lot in the Q&A part. It's unfortunate. I'm still seeing a lot of queries about, I think I've seen Meta somebody and Google, a question on that, why they're not getting their data. Remember what we said about anyone who's in the digital space. They must have declared that sale invoice as a line item and additionally filed their return. After they have filed their return, then that is when you get that CSV file as a purchaser. Before then, you can't declare it and you cannot manually introduce it. If you're not getting that CSV file for digital supply, you cannot manually introduce it. For those of us who are having situations where you followed up on purchases, on invoices to be transmitted, your supplier is not being cooperative, they become cooperative after you filed your return, so you've missed out on filing, those invoices are still claimable in a subsequent tax period. So we are doing March returns. If by 20th of April they've not complied, they've not done transmission, they do transmission on 21st, then kindly just know that invoice is still claimable. We're not taking any input VAT from you. That will it even before auto-populated, that was there in the return. It's not something we've introduced with the return. The only difference is now in the month of April, when you're filing your April 2025 return, you have to manually capture it and manually capture it as per how it was transmitted. How it was transmitted. So invoice date has to be as per transmission. PIN details should be as per transmission. Taxable amount should be as per transmission. So you can manually add, because I know a lot of us, even when the due date is coming, your invoices haven't been transmitted. I know that. I've had those scenarios. But remember, input VAT is still claimable with 6 months. Even if you're not able to claim it in the month of March 2025, April 2025, that invoice is still valid and it is still claimable. So please take note of that. Anything else I've seen I feel like I need to address? Yes, Mindy, if I can add. My colleague Caroline talked about something. She touched on something which I want to add on. If you can allow me to just briefly share my screen. There's an enhancement that is coming up that has really been a request from our taxpayers, and this is where it will be. Under PIN checker, we are doing an enhancement. It should be delivered by end of this month. This ask has come out a lot. Here under PIN details, we are introducing 2 other fields. So you'll have the PIN of the taxpayer populated, the status, the ITAX status, the taxpayer name, but additionally, we are introducing, the solution is ready, we've tested, it's working. We are introducing the ETIN status of that taxpayer, whether they have been onboarded or not. we are also introducing their VAT compliance status. That VAT compliance status is their status on the VAT special table. So if you consult a PIN, if you're doing business with someone and you need to know whether they're on the special table or not, because as a purchaser, you're not able to claim that input VAT for such scenarios, then that status will be there. So in the next filing cycle for April 2025, that data will be there on the PIN checker. So it's important to look out for it. It's coming. We've tested the solution. It is working. It is ready for deployment. We might we might not do it before due date, but for sure by end of the month it will be there. So that is something to look forward towards in terms of an enhancement that is coming. That is just what I wanted to display, and I think it will help our taxpayers a lot on you're doing business with someone. At the point of doing business with them, they're not on the special table. You can't claim that input VAT, and then it becomes a challenge. So that one is being added on the pin checker. Be on the lookout for it. We will be adding the status of a taxpayer on e-teams, whether they are onboarded or not. I've seen the solution. I've tested the solution. I know it is working. End of the month, it will be delivered. I submit, Mindy.
Okay, thank you very much, Grace. Much appreciated. I also appreciate you going through the chat to see whether there might have been a question, comment, or concern arising. Even as we wind up, maybe I can request the BSTEM BTO team, Lee and Georgina, just to quickly go through if there are any. I know most of the questions are either repeated or already answered in the beginning of the presentation. Perhaps we have a few members of the audience today who joined late, but if you see any burning concern, I'd request you to address that as we wind up. Grace, two quick questions. One, I think you've already mentioned exhaustively, but it will assist those who are concerned about the data that is auto-populated. But the first one is this issue of details, invoices, sales, or purchases that are appearing in the auto-populated return that the taxpayer says do not belong to them at all. So primarily purchases especially, maybe you can speak to how they can resolve that issue. And in the likely scenario that a credit note is issued on that purchase that they did not claim, how can they work around that, if at all? We have a number of taxpayers stating that we have data that is appearing that does not belong to us. And then the second question, some taxpayers, it's repeated, but it's in regards to, how do you say, invoice values that are understated. So the taxpayer is stating that in their ERP system, the invoice value is of a certain amount, but according to the invoice checker, when they scan the QR code, the invoice value is almost half. How do we work? How does the taxpayer work around either overstated or understated e-teams or teams invoices? So that issue of overstating or understating, I know you addressed it quite a lot in the beginning, but I'll request you to just repeat the same. And if you don't mind, together with the issue of duplicated invoices, so one or two taxpayers are still referencing that challenge. Though let me make a quick comment that I note a number of taxpayers are stating that they either are not aware of who their account managers are or have been unable to receive VAT auto-populated return support from them. So we note that, and we will continue to do internal sensitizations to build capacity internally for your account managers. And for those who don't know the account managers, you can reach out to call center at kra.go.ke, the contact on your screen, I believe, and then they should be able to find you can indicate your PIN, of course, in your tax service office, and then they should be able to find that detail for you. So Grace, maybe I can request you to address those last three issues: duplicated, understated/overstated, and erroneous invoices that do not belong to the taxpayer, sales or purchases. How can we, it's not sales, sorry, purchases. How can they address that?
Thank you, Mindy. I'll keep on asking you just to repeat the question just in case I forget. But the first one is where in a scenario the purchases are not theirs. I feel like that is such a generic question, but I'll try respond to it in the different parts I can. Now, I'm assuming in the first scenario, like now in a scenario whereby I was explaining even on the side of the seller on how to even declare that credit note, whatever you do on your sales affects someone else. VAT is a marriage. To be so blunt, it's whatever happens in sales is happening in purchases. So you have a credit note, but you never enjoyed the original input VAT. The reason as to why, okay, for lack of a better word, a lot of there has been a lot of abuse around credit notes in the past, and that is something we were trying to fix and correct in terms with the auto-populated return. You buy an item now on Luthuli Avenue. By the time you're getting to Harambe Avenue, a credit note has been issued. There's nothing you've returned. There's no return. There's no mistake. But for the aspect of reducing output VAT, a credit note is issued. So in the past, it had no impact on the purchaser. With auto-populated, that has changed because these credit notes are mandatory. Now, it's a very thin line of how we can fix that issue, because at times some are genuine mistakes, like what I was saying. You issued an original, no pin was there. Credit note, when you're coming to fix the issue because someone has complained, you're introducing a pin on the credit note. You have created a problem. You have created a problem for that purchaser. And I know they will not even leave you. So this is in a scenario kwenye mnajuana. Seller, purchaser, you know each other. Makosa imefanyika. I have a credit note, original sina. The only solution is those paper transactions, which I'm calling, where now for the original invoice that didn't have the PIN of the buyer, you reissue a new credit note where the PIN of the buyer is not there. Then now, this other credit note, you have to do an original with the actual PIN. It's like a paper transaction. It's unfortunate, but the scenarios are there. I wish there was a way we could validate it at the point of invoicing. But you see, the validations, I know we have them, the validations cannot tell if you're the right buyer or not. The most I can do is validate the PIN. If you're the right person or not, siezi jua, I cannot tell. The system cannot tell. I think such things will be now drilled down when audits and compliance checks are done. But if you're able to get in touch with the seller for them to correct this issue for you, well and good. If you're not, that is the situation at hand. Credit notes are mandatory, they cannot be removed. The aspect of the original input VAT, please pick it up with the seller. I know I've had scenarios where the sellers are being uncooperative to facilitate this, and it is even a bigger challenge for someone who's on e-teams, because e-teams limits you to the number of credit notes you can actually generate compared to teams you can do multiple. E-teams limits you. If it's a credit note, usually full, even if you did a partial, I don't think you can come, I stand to be corrected, you can come back to do the balance. I think it's just one on one. So I know there's a limitation on that part. It's something we are, as KRA, we're looking at, and we are even brainstorming on introducing a workflow for credit notes if it does not negatively impact our taxpayers, so that the abuse of credit notes is reduced to a zero. Discussions are still ongoing. How to best to sort it out. Is it's still there, because how we handle that issue of credit note, we can't open up the system. It's not a validation we can remove, because on the flip side, we are losing revenue, because at the seller side, their output has reduced. But this input was already enjoyed by the purchaser, and the subsequent reduction of that credit note has not been factored in. So there's a loss of revenue there. So for now, my response is I understand the issue, I understand the complexities around it. But again, there's a thin line in getting a solution that favors both parties, both the revenue authority and the taxpayers at hand. What was the other question, Mandy? Kindly.
So I think you've addressed the issue of erroneous invoices and so-called erroneous invoices. I think overstated and understated invoices, and then finally, yeah, I think that was it. And then we can wind up.
Overstated and understated. My assumption and my understanding is the person who was asking this question is leaning towards e-teams. Teams doesn't have overstatement, it has duplication. It's different. Uh, which is one of the challenges all the challenges I had touched on during the presentation. Now, overstated, we resolved that issue. in the month of March. The permanent solution was delivered on 15th, meaning the bleeding was stopped. And then the data fix for existing invoices was delivered on 28th March. Now, what maybe could be a challenge for our taxpayers is when you still download your CSV, the amount is overstated. But what I guided earlier was that amount should be adjusted to the correct position. And I gave guidance that we rely on our Z reports or Jasper reports, that which are the sales report, which you can get from your account managers. Now, the taxable amount has been corrected. So that means is you have to manually edit it. So I've gotten data. Can I share my screen, please? Please, 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 quickly, quickly, quickly. So that it comes out a bit more clearly. So I've gotten data. These are my CSV files. These are my sales, because that is where the issue is. Assuming that invoice is what is overstated, it's an e-Teams invoice. That is what it's overstated. It's a 2,888,582.75 invoice. As per my Z report and the sale I actually made, I only sold 888,582.75. With the solution we've delivered, the CSV file will still carry the 2 million, the 2.8 million. So what I want you to do is manually edit it to the correct amount. If you manually edit and you submit the return, the return will go through. That is my response for overstated. However, I gave a disclaimer. In the event that you find that even when you manually edit, that invoice is still being rejected, then please escalate it to your account manager. We will provide a fix. We corrected 2.9 million invoices, and I know we are running out of time. We corrected 2.9 million invoices, but I don't want to say we got all of them. There's still a possibility we missed some. I've even stated I have someone who shared with me two invoices yesterday, and I'm analyzing to see how we can correct it. It's an overstated invoice. So there could be some invoices that we didn't, like catching fish, umeenda kwa lake, you're catching fish, we didn't catch all the fish. So it's the same thing. So we can still look at it, we correct it for you so that you're able to capture the correct amount. Understated e-Teams, I'm surprised that is an issue because we resolved it. The only period that would be an issue is that invoice is for December 2024. For the reason, when we did the correction, as I stated, the data fix, which is the updating of the existing invoices, went before in terms of going to production, which is what our taxpayers access and have visibility of, went before the bleeding was stopped. So there's a gap in the window of our solution, which we're supposed to fix. So if it is an invoice outside December 2024, imagine I would want to see it, because it would mean our permanent solution is not working as it should be. So if you can escalate, whoever had escalated the issue, if you can escalate it to your account manager, it will find a way to our group mail. Then we will be able to pick the issue, analyze, and turudi jikoni, just to ensure our permanent solution is working. Because we did even the checks with some of, we handpicked pilotees, both our office and e-Teams office, and they confirmed it was working. But then again, something might have happened that now there are some invoices that are affected. I'm not ruling it out. So I don't want to discredit the taxpayer. I'm just saying from where we sit, that particular issue has been resolved. But in the event it has reoccurred, we will pick on it and resolve it. Any other question, Mandy?
No additional questions that haven't already been responded to. So allow me to really appreciate the entire team that has been with us the last 2 hours, Caroline, Annalyn, and Vicky, together with the BTO BSTEM team, Georgina and Lee. Thank you very much, Grace, for taking us through the bulk of the presentation and responding to our questions, comments, and concerns. You've been here the last 3 days, and we thank you and your team for sensitizing us and keeping us up to date with the key enhancements. I trust that we will likely be here again before the end of the financial year with any remaining concerns that taxpayers might have, so that we can move into the new financial year also with continued seamless transitions. Asante sana. Most of all, we sincerely appreciate you, our esteemed taxpayers, for attending today's sensitization. Those who continue to attend from Monday, we don't take that for granted either. We posted some helpful links to VAT auto-populated step-by-step guides, frequently asked questions,